Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this week. I'm Liz Mangus, Literacy Specialist with Saddleback Educational Publishing. Happy summer. This is the first webinar of our summer webinar series. So hopefully you are joining us from a beach someplace, or maybe you're just at home finally getting a chance to relax. So congratulations to all of you for making it through a very tough school year, and hopefully you are getting a chance to relax. And thank you for joining us to learn today. So as usual, your control bar can be found on the bottom of your web browser window. And that is where you will find the chat, the Q&A, and the live transcript. If you would like to take advantage of subtitles, you'll have to click on live transcript and then select show subtitle. If you have questions, those can go in the Q&A area. And we do want you to chat with us today, but please remember, as you are chatting with us, you have to go to your drop-down menu in the chat and select everyone in order for all of the participants to see your comment. So what I recommend is that you go to the chat right now, click on everyone, and just say hello. Let us know where you are joining us from, because once you do it once, it'll automatically be set. So don't forget, we are on Twitter. So our presenter today, Nancy Motley, is on Twitter and Saddleback is on Twitter. Please follow us, say hello, let us know that you joined us today. We always love hearing from you. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Let's check the chat here. Hi, everyone. You know what? I need to follow my own directions and click on everyone here in the chat. There we go. I am so excited that everybody is joining us today from their summer vacation. So you all make me so happy. Let's say hi to Nancy, by the way. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, how are you?
We're excited to have you. This is your first time on the Saddleback webinar series. I don't know why or how, like why it took so long,
right? I know.
For me to you know, wake up and get with it and have Nancy on.
That's a two-way street. It's one of another set of things, right? But I'm glad we made it happen.
Yes, we finally made it happen. And for those of you who don't know, Nancy has a new book coming out. It's awesome. So we're definitely going to be learning a little bit about that today. And we'll be doing a book giveaway as well. So stay tuned for that.
Somebody's going to win.
Yes. Okay. Hi, Anna. Thanks for joining us. And I saw Robert Kim was on as well. Sharon, Sherry. Hi, Sherry. Elena, welcome everybody.
Michelle's here from BC. We've got people from everywhere.
I love to see it. All right. Okay. San Antonio, Sheldon ISD. Welcome, Suzanne. And Frisco ISD. I always, of course, love the Texas presence because that's where I am. And Ohio. Hi, Jennifer from Ohio. I can tell everybody's relaxed now that it's summer vacation. Everybody's like, whew, had a chance to relax a little bit now. Now I can engage with a little bit more energy in the chat. So 73 where you are, Sherry. That's nice. I feel like it's 1,000 degrees here. So
yeah, we haven't seen 73 or rain where I live.
So enjoy that, Sherry. All right, it's about time to get started. Thanks everyone again for joining us. So our topic today, small moves, big gains. We are looking to build teacher habits for student success, and here to discuss this with us is Nancy Motley. She is a senior education consultant for Sidelets Education, specializing in literacy and second language acquisition strategies. She is the author of Small Moves, Big Gains, Teacher Habits that Help Students Talk More, Think More, and Achieve More. And that is the embodiment of her teaching philosophy. So you may also know her other book, Talk, Read, Talk, Write, A Practical Routine for Learning in All Content Areas K-12. She is wonderful. Thank you so much for volunteering to come and share your expertise with us. And I will let you take it from here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and try to switch to my slide deck. Let's see if I'm doing this right. Nope. Give me just a moment, everybody. Thank y'all for your patience. All right, now let me try this. Here we go. Thankfully, it's been a little while since I've done anything on Zoom, because most of the places where I work, we're back to face-to-face, which has been actually really quite nice. So we are going to go ahead and get started. We are going to have a fast and furious 45 minutes or so to talk about all things related to this new resource of mine, Small Moves, Big Gains. And I wanted to start by having everybody think about, we hear talk a lot in education in our classrooms, in our data meetings, at faculty meetings about achievement and gains and growth and, moving the needle. And when we think about our emergent bilingual population, our multilingual learners, a lot of that is measured on whatever your language proficiency assessment is. So my question to start off with is, how do we do it? And I've already told you the title of my book, so you probably have an intuitive guess that it's not that big change, big gains, they really don't require big moves, big goals, big change. Certainly we have to have a vision. If I have any administrators or coordinators out there, I'm not saying that we don't do strategic planning, right? But the idea is, if anybody ever wanted to run a marathon, for example, you don't wake up one morning and run a marathon. What do you have to do? You have to train for it. And what does that look like? Well, the first thing you have to do is buy some tennis shoes if you don't have them, right? So in that context, this idea of buying some tennis shoes might be the small move that's going to execute a ripple effect to be able to allow you to achieve your big gains. So let's dig into the framework. For those, and I'm sorry, it's so funny. We were just talking about the things that happen in the background. There's an ice cream truck right outside. So if you hear that, it'll help you feel like you're at the beach and it's summertime. So there's an ice cream truck in the cul-de-sac. All right, coming back to me. So how do we achieve big gains? Well, I would imagine that for all 62 of you that I see on here right now, your goals for your students might be a little different. You might determine the big gain that you want is to build relationships with kids. Or maybe your big gain is very centered around language acquisition. Or maybe your big gain is a test score. Or maybe your big gain is you want students to be super confident in themselves. So the first part of any of this content to work is we have to figure out what kind of teacher we want to be. What is our vision? And when we have that, we simply make small moves every day that show that that is the kind of teacher we are. So when I think about the small moves, I think about that as like a vote for yourself. You're going to do something today that's little and tiny that says that is the kind of teacher I am. And we can't stop there, because what we have to do then with the small moves is figure out how to automate them. We want to turn whatever those effective moves that are voting for the kind of teacher we want to be into habits. And so if you look at these three rectangles, this is going to kind of be the organizational structure of our talk today. So we're going to touch in on what kind of teacher we want to be first, to maybe set some goals or have that big vision. And then I'm going to share with you 3 specific small moves that I think are going to help any teacher with any vision they have. And then we're going to close with 2 ideas for how do we automate those small moves? How do we transition them into a habit? And a habit is something that's almost impossible not to do. It's so automatic, we don't have to think about it. So let's get started. It's summer. We can slow down for a second. I bet many of us don't think about this question very often in our day-to-day life, because we have 75 priorities all day long hitting us at 100 miles an hour. So I did want to slow down right here and have everybody think about this for a minute. And if you're not a teacher, if you have a different role in education, just transition that. So you could say, what type of director do you want to be? What type of administrator do you want to be? What type of parent liaison do you want to be? So just kind of think about whatever role that is. And let me give you some stems to get you started. And I'm going to give it just a few seconds. If you guys wouldn't mind sharing in the chat, what are your thoughts about this? I see, let's see here, Robert Kim, I want to be the type of teacher who's culturally responsive. Excellent. Melinda wants to be one with a positive self-affirming impact. Excellent. I'm going to give it a few more minutes. I'm not minutes, seconds, so that those of you that are typing might get some ideas in there. I like this idea. Elena shares that she wants to be the type of teacher that shows students how to move forward. Like we're going to kind of shine the flashlight and give them the path. That's great. Oh, Yoshiko really listening to students. That's That's a vision that I have for myself as a parent right now. I have 2 teenage girls, so I can really identify with that one. I hear them, but I'm not always listening like I need to be. All right, Pilar says empathetic and equitable. You guys, thank you so much for your participation in the chat. What I'm going to do for the purposes of this session is I'm going to complete these 2 sentence stems with not only the kind of teacher that I want to be, but I would imagine that no matter what you put in the chat, I'm hoping that we can all have some synthesis around these 2 ideas as well. So what kind of teacher do I want to be? I definitely want to be the type of teacher that's going to help students experience success. And for me, if I wanted to be even more concrete, one way that I can do that is I want to be the type of teacher whose students are able to talk more and to think more. So that's really when we think about that beginning step in this framework, what kind of teacher do we want to be? That's what we're going to focus in on today. So how can I be the teacher where the kids in my class are thinking often and they're communicating often? And because they're doing both of those things, they're experiencing success minute to minute and daily in my classroom. So let's just say, for all intents and purposes, we've thought about this. And now my next step was we've got to make the small moves that show it, right? So I want to define what a small move is. I just did this session for the very first time last week, and I had a room full of people like you who are of your will deciding to attend a training in July, right? So I can already establish that my audience right now, you guys are the super overachiever, hardworking, passionate, diehard educators, right? And sometimes, and I'm one of you, sometimes we, those of us that are like just soaking up everything we can, our vision of what is small isn't actually small at all. Like, how many times have you maybe said, oh, well, that's so easy. They just need to do blank. But whatever that blank is, they just need to randomize when they're calling on kids. But that, I would argue, is not a small move. That's a large behavioral change in the classroom. So let me define what I mean by small moves. And there's really 3 main descriptors. The first of the descriptors is that a small move has to be actionable. What I mean by that is a teacher in a classroom can do it now. They don't have to go attend a 6-hour training to be able to do it. They don't have to read a chapter in a book to be able to do it. They can just give it a shot. The next one is super important to me, which is it's got to be very brief. And here's why. I have a pretty extreme sense of like perfectionism. I don't like to fail, right? And if I'm going to try something out in the classroom and it doesn't go well, and it took over half of my class period, do you see, I'd be very averse to trying anything else that's new. So we want to keep it short. And if you wanted to quantify this, when I say brief, these strategies, the moves I'm going to share with you that are going to help kids talk more and think more, I would argue are instantaneous in some cases, definitely 2 minutes or less. So very, very short. And all of us will appreciate this last descriptor. A small move requires almost no prep. So I put low to no prep because some of them have some thinking involved, but there's not a whole lot of intense planning that's needed. Here's another bonus for the 3 moves I'm going to share with you. They're going to work for all of you. It doesn't matter whether you're a pre-K teacher or you teach AP physics, or you're the dance teacher or the manufacturing teacher, or you're an ESL pullout teacher, or you're a push-in ESL co-teacher, right? Whatever you teach, these moves are going to work for you. All right. We want to be the kind of teacher that's going to help kids talk more and think more so they can be more successful. And now what we're going to look at are what are some small moves, some brief, actionable, and low to no prep things we can do to achieve that. So the 3 moves that I'm going to introduce to you guys today, and a couple of them, you are the very first people on earth who are getting to hear about it. So that's kind of cool. Small move number 1 is called solo sandwich. Small move number 2 is called pick a number. And small move number 3 is called prep the speaker. Now, the reason I grouped these 3 or selected these 3 is that they all take place around collaboration in the classroom. So we're going to get into each one and we're going to talk about how they help kids talk more and think more. But I just wanted you to know that the place that we're going to use these moves is whenever we're asking kids to collaborate. So I thought it might be helpful for us to have some context. So I'm just going to share 3 kind of examples of where these might fit. If you are a primary teacher, and one context might be if you teach first grade, all your friends are on the carpet, you're sitting in your rocking chair, you're doing a read aloud, and you've looked at the cover of the book and you're asking your first graders to predict what they think this story will be about with their partner. So that might be an example of what I mean by collaboration at the primary level, okay? Another example context, maybe think upper elementary, middle school. I just put 5th graders, but let's pretend you're upper elementary, middle school math teacher, and groups of 4 kids are sitting at desks, right? You have the tables grouped in 4. And what you've done is you put up a warm up and you're asking the groups of tables to discuss which problem solving strategy they think they should use for this problem. So that might be a context for that age group of students. The collaboration might look like this in a chemistry classroom. What if you have triads that are working on a lab in chemistry, and they're done with the lab, but before they go sit down to write their conclusions on their own, you've tasked them with brainstorming what are some possible causes of the chemical change they just experienced in the lab. I offered these 3 what I want to encourage all of you to do right now is just think of what would be a typical context for the students with whom you work to be collaborating, because that's where this information is going to land. Okay. Let's see here. All right. Solo sandwich. A solo sandwich is you thinking about and offering opportunities for kids to individually process before collaborative work and after collaborative work. So if we wanted to label this sandwich, all the goodies in the middle, the meat, the cheese, the tomatoes, you know, the peanut butter and jelly, whatever you're going to put in the inside of your sandwich, that would be the collaborative task. What you're already doing, you're already having kids collaborate. So in that first grade class, it's when you're telling them to talk to their partner about what they predict the story is about. What I'm suggesting in this move is that immediately before that, excuse me. What am I doing this? Let's see here. Can you guys see my screen? Let me start over. All right, here we go. Immediately before that, we're going to ask every individual first grader to think about what's one prediction that they have. So they're individually processing before they talk to their partner. And then after they talk to their partner, they're going to individually process again. So I might say, when you've got a prediction after talking with your partner, what's your favorite prediction? What do you think is the best prediction? Let me give you the context for the 5th grade one. So if in 5th grade, I know what I'm going to do is tell my kids, talk with your group about which problem solving strategy to use. In real time in that 5th grade classroom, what it might look like to employ a solo sandwich is I say, all right, everybody, look at your notes. You have a list in your notes of the problem solving strategies that we've been learning. I want you to pick one you think you can use for this problem and touch it. So we've got a physical symbol that took how much time? Enough time to read their list and touch it. So certainly we're talking a matter of seconds. And then I ask them to talk at their tables about what problem solving strategy to use. And then we want to follow up again with individual processing time. So it might look like this. Okay, now that you've talked with your table, I want you to record in your journal, I think the blank strategy is best for this problem because. So this part of the solo sandwich might only be 10 or 12 seconds. This part might be 1 to 2 minutes if we incorporated writing. So that's solo sandwich. Here's my question. How would doing this support your students being able to talk more and think more? So I'll just give you guys a few seconds in the chat to kind of think through that answer. My question is, how would doing this give kids increased opportunities to talk or increased opportunities to think? You guys are hitting on all the marks. I mean, I'm hoping you're connecting that there's a lot of benefits. One is I find that, I was like somebody way before like Kagan strategies. Like my kids were collaborating all the time because I love to talk. So I let them talk all the time. And part of the challenge was, even though they were collaborating a lot, I wasn't getting any sort of individual checks for my kids. I actually had a lot of kids that were able to kind of coast on the thinking and learning of the most vocal person in the group. They would always know that Nancy was going to tell the answer. So they'd lean in and nod at her and she'd do all the thinking and all the talking. And then the teacher would say, who's got an idea to share and who shares? Nancy, right? So I think accountability is something that I saw brought up in the chat, but then we're looking at the other end of this too. Several of you wrote that it lowers the affective filter. I would agree with that. I think when it's just turn and talk to your partner, I'm not sure what I want to say yet. Or what if I know exactly what I want to say, but I don't know how to say it in the language of instruction for that class period, right? So this idea of giving them time to process on their own. Here's one other one, and I haven't been able to read all of these items in the chat, but they're coming in fast and furious. So if you put it in the chat, great job. That solo on the back end of collaboration, that is also training reflection and metacognition. And there is a lot of research to support that when we build in time for students to reflect on their own learning, the learning sticks. So this idea that, yeah, that's all fine and good, but I only need them to know the math. Well, they're going to know the math better when we incorporate solo sandwich. All right, I'm ready to move on to our second strategy. No, I'm not. I have to do a check. I told you that all these moves are small, right? And how did we define small? Is this task actionable? Is it brief? And is it low to no prep? I would say yes. But if some of you are going, well, hang on a second, I've got to figure out what those solo tasks are going to be. Here's a way that you can even automate that. Right now, when we finish with this webinar, couldn't you brainstorm 2 or 3 phrases that would be before talk and 2 or 3 phrases that would be after talk that you're going to have kids use? I mean, this idea of completing a STEM, that could always be your after solo one. The idea of using a signal could always be your before solo one. So once you brainstorm kind of a bank of ways to remember to ask kids to independently process, then you're great. All right, and a lot of you I see are mentioning you're familiar with QSSA. Certainly, I would argue also though that this solo sandwich, I'm talking about in a brief conversation in those contexts I gave you, but this could even be in larger collaborative projects. So it doesn't necessarily even have to be about conversation. Anytime where kids are working together, I want to make sure that it's not only collaborative work. We've got individual think time, collaboration, individual processing time on the back end as well. All right. Strategy number 2, or small move number 2, is during it's called pick a number. And the short directions are, when we're going to ask kids to talk, we're going to give them a target quantity or number of answers or ideas to generate. I want you to look at the difference between these two. This is that 5th grade example again, right? Okay, guys, I want you to talk with your group about which problem solving strategy to use. And then when my class starts to talk, typically what happens, you correct me if you're wrong, typically what happened now is that the most knowledgeable and the most extroverted in the group is going to share what they think is the best idea. And then the next person is going to say, I agree, that sounds really good. And then the next person is going to go, I thought of that too, even though he hasn't thought about anything yet. And then the 4th person is going to change the subject and they're going to get off task. Yes? Is this relatable, right? I mean, what happens is that they're going to answer it, but oftentimes in our search to have kids collaborate, they're just trying to get out the bare minimum or what they think the teacher is looking for. And if the group or the partnership feels like, oh, we've got one, then they're done. So this is not what we're going to do. Instead, what we're going to do, we're not complicating the task. We're making the task exactly the same, but we're going to pick a number with it. I want you to talk with your group about which problem-solving strategy to use. Try to identify at least 3 that will work. The act of giving them the number 3 will almost always extend conversation at every one of those 5th grade groups. How would this look in 1st grade? Okay, I'm going to have you turn to your partner about what you predict this story is going to be about. See if you can make at least 2 predictions, maybe one about this character and maybe one about this character. You see what I just did? I just extended their thinking, right? What does it look like in that chemistry classroom? So you guys, everybody's witnessed some chemical change, and I'm looking for what are some possible outcomes. The minimum is 2. Let me just tell you this. When I wrote my model conclusion, I came up with 5. So see if you can get to 5. And when we quantify that, when we get in the habit of doing that, I think this one is pretty inherent in how we know kids will talk more and think more. We're moving from what does the teacher want me to say to let me think of as many ideas as I'm capable of thinking of. So now let's go back to our criteria. Does pick a number meet our small moves criteria? Is it actionable? Is it brief? Is it low to no prep? This one is money in the bank. Yes, yes, and yes to all of them. So the idea is we just want to quantify once we give them a talking task or a collaboration task. Something that's really nice when you do pick a number consistently in the classroom is you won't have to do it forever because you will have trained kids enough to think in an extended and elaborative way. They literally over time, they're going to no longer do the bare minimum. They're going to just know like, yeah, but what else could we do? How else could that look? So I think this is one that we see transition to students taking ownership over it when we do it consistently. Okay. Any comments, questions, or concerns in the chat about pick a number? All right. So simple yet so effective. I totally agree with you. Who is that? Catherine or Katie said that. All right, very good. Okay, I'm moving on to our third and final small move. This is another one of my favorites. It's called prep the speaker. I want you to imagine that 5th grade class. I've let them talk. I've said, I want to challenge you to come up with at least 3 different problem solving strategies we might be able to use in this warm up. And then I say, all right, you guys, I'm going to call on all the number 3s from the table. Everybody envision your classroom right now. You say, I'm going to call on the number 3s. Typically, what ensues after that, especially in a 5th, 6th, or 7th grade classroom, is every person at the table who's not a number 3, they point and laugh at number 3, right? Because 3 got picked and not them. They're off the hook. So instead, before we pick the number 3s, we build in some time for the table to prepare the speaker who is going to share out to the larger class. So instead of saying this, we're going to say, guys, the number 3s are going to be your table speaker. 1s, 2s, and 4s, I'm going to give you guys about 30 seconds to prepare them. So 3s, lean in, ask your table mates, what do you want? Have them repeat what they said. Do you see what I just did there? I transitioned from a number 3 or anybody being randomized to feeling isolated and put on the spot. And quite frankly, the other 3 kids feeling like I'm off the hook. I don't have to do anything. We're totally shifting that just by saying you got a few seconds to prepare them, because now 1s, 2s, and 4s, they feel like they're part of a team that represent the 3 is their representative. It's so important to them that their speaker is ready and good. And what does the number 3 do? They get all kinds of support. So it's a win-win for both sides of that. Another example, how might this look? A lot of us do like pull popsicle sticks, or we might do wheel of names or class dojo. Often it looks like this. Okay, guys, I'm going to pull 3 sticks. Let's see who's going to go first. Well, let's pretend like I was going to say that in that 1st grade example where all the kids are on the carpet. Instead, what I can say if I'm going to prep the speaker, it might look like this. Okay, boys and girls, I'm about to pull 3 sticks, but before I do, I want everybody to practice what they're going to say with their partner. So that might not be 3 people helping one person like a whole group, but couldn't partners get a practice in before they're sharing out to the larger group? Of course. I mean, you guys, can you imagine the impact on the language acquisition that's going on in the classroom just because of allowing for those oral rehearsals in a super quick way before we have kids talk? I think this one really lands with that lowering of the affective filter, right? This idea that if I get selected to share out to the larger group, almost always there's a little bit of a stress reaction. And I think that this one just helps train kids to calm down and prepare, get a practice in, and then the act of sharing out to the larger group is much more comfortable. All right. So we've got to check this one against our small moves criteria. Could we have students prep the speaker in a 12th grade physics class? Yes. What would prep the speaker look like with early primary? You know what that might look like? That might look like we're all practicing together, right? I might say, okay, I predict this story is about Frog and Toad going to the park. And then I say, let's all practice that together. Let's all say it. And then I still might pull a stick and have Carlos say it after that. So prep the speaker can be nuanced in the way it looks, depending on your grade, your content, and what you're working with. But I would argue that it certainly is actionable in the moment. Brief, this one's tricky. It depends on how much you're asking the speaker to share out. To me, I rarely give more than 30 seconds, because if they're just going to share out one idea, often they don't need a whole lot more time than that. And then low to no prep, you're just reminding them to do the prep. They're preparing the speaker themselves. So, all right. So we've got solo sandwich, we've got pick a number, and we've got prep the speaker. So the first step was to decide what kind of teacher we want to be. And we're focusing right now on the kind of teacher that helps kids talk more and think more, right? And then what we're going to do is we're just going to make moves. We're going to do stuff in the classroom that communicates this. That's a vote for me being that kind of a teacher. And these are 3 strategies for doing that. Now, here's the hard part. The hard part is doing these steps, these small moves, making these very small moves, telling them how many ideas you want them to have and pick a number. It's doing that so frequently that it turns into an automatic habit. Now, you guys, all of us have habits. I was reading a piece of research the other day that about 40 to 45% of all of our day is habit. Can you just imagine, you guys, if 40 to 45% of our teaching school day was not only habitual, but it was habitual, zeroed in on being this kind of a teacher. It was just automatic. Like as automatic as sometimes you pull into your driveway and don't remember how you got there, right? Because the route home is automatic. That's what we're talking about here. So what I want to offer you is a big idea about habit formation and some specific ideas about habit formation. And I think you'll notice that what I'm going to share with you in this third and final part of our presentation, there's some applications certainly for making these small moves habits in our classroom, but you're going to see a personal connection too. The reality is, if we want to change any behavior, the ideas I'm going to share with you right now, I think will land. Okay. The big idea I want to share with you about habits is we have to give ourselves a break. Often when you're trying to do something new, what do? You have this big lofty goal, right? I want to decrease my screen time on my phone by 2 hours a week, or I want to lose 15 pounds before Christmas, right? These big goals. And you know what happens when we set the big goal? Often we don't achieve it. And then what do? Self-judgment. We say, I'm no good at that, or I can't do that, or I tried, but that didn't work. And how often does that mindset of self-judgment creep in as a teacher? Man, it does. And so the analogy that I want to share with you to help you to stop being so self-judgy is from James Clear's work, Atomic Habits, this icon of the book. If you haven't read this book, totally worth summer reading. I'm on my 3rd round of reading it right now. And his analogy is a rose bush. He says, nobody looks at this budding rose bush right here and gets mad at it for not being fully grown, right? Nobody looks at a seed and says, I cannot believe you're a full grown bush already. Why? Because when we look at this kind of progression, this is exactly what we expect from a rose bush. It's going to start as a seed and it's going to grow slowly over time into whatever this product should be at the end, right? So I want you to think of yourself as maybe the rose seed, or maybe this very small seedling rose bush, or maybe you're closer to having all of these flowers, but the idea is you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Don't beat yourself up for not being there yet. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. And what are we going to do with habits? We're going to do what the rose bush does and just grow every day. We're just going to grow every day. We're not going to talk about where we're not or what we're not doing or what went wrong or being all mad at ourselves. We're just going to grow every day. That's what the rose bush does. That's what we're going to do. So I think when we think about any behavior change, whether it's implementing pick a number in your classroom or wanting to be more connected to your teenage daughter or drinking less caffeine, whatever it is, right, that we're trying to cultivate, we just want to keep growing every day. So I know that's not very concrete. So I do want to give you some concrete ideas for your own classroom right now. So if we're thinking about the 3 small moves that I shared with you that are going to help your kids talk more and think more, how do we do that? Every piece of research I've read about habit formation and how you do it had this idea in it. It was common among everything. Now, all of these experts, they all have different formats and plans and other ideas for habit formation. This isn't the only thing to do, but this is the thing that they all agreed on doing, which was in order to make a new habit, in order to turn something you want to do that you do sometimes into something that is automatic, you have to have accountability. Well, this presents a little bit of a problem for us because most of us are kind of islands unto ourselves, right? I mean, most of my teaching career didn't have another adult in the room. Certainly we're transitioning away from that, which is really nice, this idea of co-teachers and collaborative planning and collaborative work. But how am I going to, if I'm trying to remember to tell my table to come up with 3 ideas instead of just an idea, who's going to help me? So what I'm going to do right now is give you 5 ideas for how to do that. And I want you to listen for the idea you like the best. And when I finish the list, you're going to type the idea you like the best in the chat. So maybe make a list of the ideas right now. One way to hold yourself accountable for incorporating these small moves in your classroom is to let your kids in on the secret. I mean, literally, you're going to go into class and you're going to say, so you guys, I'm going to try something new. And it's what I want to always try to do is give everybody a chance to practice or prepare whoever's going to share out loud. And I need your help remembering to do that. So anytime when we're talking together, when I come back and when you see me pick up my sticks, somebody needs to help me. You can just tell me, you can just say, prep the speaker, Miss Motley, right? Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, right, whatever. My 2nd graders are not going to remember to do that. Most of your kids won't, but all of you teach a kid who will, right? All of you teach at least one of these super conscientious teacher-like children, right? And those are the ones that are going to help you out. Another way might be like for pick a number. I let them know that I'm going to try to quantify, and then you can just train them. Okay, before we turn and talk, and what are they going to say to you? How many ideas, Miss Motley? You're going to train them to help you remember to do the things you want to do. I love that one. I think sometimes we have a plan, we know where we want to go, and we're the only one in the room who knows where we want to go. If we let our kids know, they'll help us. They will absolutely help us. All right, the next one is certainly to enlist the help of a colleague. This can look a lot of different ways. I share a story in one of the high schools that I worked with in Houston last year. One of the hallways was all science, and there were 2 biology teachers across the hall, and all they were trying to do was incorporate the opportunities to talk. So just like allowing partners to talk to each other more than once or twice in a class period. And one of the norms that's already in place in their building is they all have to stand at their door during the passing period. And then every teacher greets every student when they come in whatever way that teacher and class has determined, right? So when these 2 biology teachers who teach across the hall from each other are in the passing period, they share a number sign like 3 or 2 or 1. And what they're sharing is how many times did the kids talk in the previous class. Here's the beauty of this one. It's going to be totally imperfect. But what if like neither one of y'all remember to do that? And by 3rd period, you're like across the hall, I totally forgot. She's going to go, me too. What happens in 4th period? Both of those teachers are now reinforced in thinking about how can I get kids talking more in my class. I've also seen plenty of teams of teachers. If you already have embedded in your school design, PLCs, common planning periods, right? Anytime where your teachers are already collaborating, couldn't you imagine that you just tack on one of the small moves that you guys are all in agreement to working on, and in your weekly meetings, you're just checking in on it. Just the act of having it on the agenda. It might take 1 minute. How are we doing with solo sandwich, you guys? And 3 people are going to go, oh, totally forgot, but they'll probably go back to class when they pick up their kids from electives and be thinking about it. So over time, it is going to build in some accountability. I love this one. So Doug Lemov calls this calling your shot. And basically it's saying, instead of admin walking into your room or coaches walking in your room or people who may be come into your room that make you nervous, instead of like wondering what they're seeing or what they're looking for, you just tell them what to look for. I might email my administrator and say, hey, I watched this webinar this summer. There's these 2 things that I'm really going to work on. And every time you come into my room, I'd really appreciate some feedback on it, even just a Post-it note. Right. So when you let them know, first of all, what are you doing? You're communicating that you have a rose bush mindset. You grow every day. And everybody in a building wants that, right? Including your administrator. But you're also saying, hey, I'm going to take ownership over what I'm working on, and I'd like for you to support me in that. Another one, many of you are familiar with this idea of keeping a record. Your phones, a lot of them like track your steps, right? If you have a Fitbit, some of you might keep food journals, right? The tricky part of keeping a record is, in my experience, I don't want to overcomplicate that. I don't want the record keeping to turn into a big old move about my small move, right? So just keep that part in mind. But some of you, this is the thing that will work for holding you accountable. I actually do have a teacher who tallies on her hand. So she has like pen tally marks all over her dirty hand by the end of the day. I don't recommend that one. I'm just saying it works for her. What might work for me is a space on my board where I can do tallies. Like every time that I remember to complete a solo sandwich where I give them that processing time at the end, I'm going to put a little check mark, and I'm going to try to get to 10 check marks a day, right? Certainly there's electronic ways to track anything you're working on as well. And my last bullet point is really connected to us all being together right now, which is I would strongly encourage any small move work that you're doing to capitalize on social media. Some of you might be the only person in your role in your entire district or your entire community, right? But you found Saddleback, right? You found these webinars. You are already advocating yourself and demonstrating that you're the type of person that's going to just keep growing. So the idea is, if you're working on something, it doesn't have to be a biology teacher across the hall. It doesn't have to be your own class. It doesn't have to be your administrator. It could be perfect strangers, or it could be your PLN, right? We could start a movement even. So, oh, there I go with the big ideas. But anyway, so these ideas for accountability, I find, are all highly applicable to classroom focus on building a small move. So I don't know if you're already doing this right now, but I'm opening my chat back up, and I ask you to listen for which one you like the best. So if you can look at the list, and we'll just kind of get a sampling of what you guys are thinking. Oh, Chessie's here. Hi, Chessie. I know there's a lot of you that I know on here. I just haven't seen all of your names. All right. It looks like there's a majority of talking to your kids about whatever you're working on, but I've seen all of these in the chat. So I'm excited that you guys seem like you have some momentum behind at least one, if not more, of those ideas. So I am going to wrap up with a quick review. All right. We got to start with what kind of teacher, what kind of AP, what kind of coach do I want to be? You know, I mean, don't overcomplicate it, but couldn't we all benefit from spending like a minute writing down a 1 or 2 sentence sort of personal mission statement? Because that will guide every decision you make. And then following that, we're just going to make those brief, low to no prep, actionable moves that show the kind of teacher we want to be. And then when we've decided on 1 or more small moves that we want to focus on, we've got to figure out how to automate those. And the 2 things we're going to really do to start beginning that habit formation is we're going to quit judging ourselves so much. We are a rose bush that is just intended to keep growing. There's no negative self-talk. And then we're going to build in some accountability structures, which you guys had a list of 5 for there. All right. That's my content. And I turned my phone off because I was afraid it was going to ring, and I don't know what time it is. So Liz, was I like way over, way under?
No, you are right on the nose, actually. So well done.
All right. Very good. And then my final slide, you guys, I think Liz is going to randomly select someone right now to win a free book. I'm going to mail that to you. We'll get your email address in the chat, and then I'll email that out to you in the next week. And then we are also going to have a second giveaway. And here's how the second giveaway is going to work. My hashtag for this book is #smallmoves, and my Twitter handle is right here at Nancy Motley TRTW. I will be giving away a second free book by selecting a tweet about this webinar that I like the best. it's purely subjective. There's nothing fair about it. I'm going to pick what I like. So make it creative and good. I'm always good for a smile and a laugh. So if you can bring any of that to your tweet, that would be great. And I will be selecting that on Monday. So this coming Monday, and I'll make an announcement on Twitter so you guys can see who the winner there is as well. And then last but not least, if you are interested in purchasing the book, here, this QR code, if you scan it, is going to bring you to the Amazon link. And obviously those of you that work in school districts, I can come to you as well. So I have a full day version of this training that I just piloted last week and got some really great feedback on. So that's what I've got. Liz, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Okay, we did have a request for if you could show the solo sandwich slide one more time.
Sure. Let's find it. So this is the one, I will put it up. It does not have the example. So if somebody's trying to snap a photo of that one.
Okay.
And then I will move to the next one that was the example as well. So that's an example of it.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, I was going to wait until I took screen share back to share the random winner, but
I can do that. Let me stop share. Sorry.
Okay. No, I just wanted whoever, I can't remember who asked for that slide, but he or she, I know she needed a few seconds to get us a picture or what have you. So I went through and I randomly picked somebody from the names, and the winner is Jordan Greer. So thank you for joining us on the live session, Jordan. And then if you are watching the recording, or obviously if you're on live and you're not Jordan, you can still enter for your chance to win. Go ahead and tweet about the webinar and let Nancy know what your biggest your favorite thing about the webinar was, right? Is that what you wanted?
Or just any of the content that was relevant.
The content that was relevant. So just please do share your thoughts on that.
Someone asked in the chat for the picture, I think, of the cover of the book. This is what the cover of the book looks like. But maybe it was something different. So I just put that back up in case that's what they were asking for. Okay, go on, Liz. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. And then we did just put a link to the certificate of attendance in the chat, but you will be receiving an email later today or tomorrow with a link to the recording and also a link to the certificate of attendance. So, all right, let me go ahead and take the screen share back and let everybody know who is coming up next week. So next week we have Leanne Nicholson returning to the webinar series, and she's going to talk about student generated questions and powerful discussions. So she has been on our webinar series 2 or 3 times, and she always has very powerful content and practical as well. So we do hope you'll be able to join us. So this will be on Thursday, 12 o'clock Pacific, 3 o'clock Eastern time. Also, please don't forget that Saddleback's new Go Decode Tween phonics library is now available. If you are interested in samples or have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to answer your questions. And then finally, we do have time for a question or two. So let's see. There was this one question here. How do you address the administrator who thinks classrooms should be silent?
Fire them. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding about that. What I can tell you is that I think that as teachers, we find ourselves in positions where we don't have a lot of control often, right? Like we have control over certain things and we don't over others. It's kind of like that in life as well. And so my approach to resistance that to me is just crazy, like a silent classroom is crazy to me, right? I have a wildly different opinion than that administrator is. I'm going to be very thoughtful about what I'm doing in my room. So if I get challenged on it by that administrator, I've got both feet underneath me, right? So this is a place where, for example, if talk is happening right now, but it might not be happening that effectively, I'm going to lean into the small moves that are going to help structure conversation so that the volume is right, what they're talking about is right, all the things that I might get something negative from. And then the other thing that I do is quietly push. And so an example like that, a quiet push for me with an administrator might be, I'm actually going to take a little bit of time to do some extra reading and research. And when I find a current article in American Education that's about that, I might read it myself, highlight the parts that are relevant, because he's not going to read the whole thing, or she's not going to read the whole thing anyway, right? And just put it with a sticky note in his box, say, I thought you might like to read this. So that kind of thing where I'm providing education to him or her, but not in any sort of an adversarial way that's pushing the envelope. I want to push the envelope. I just don't want to get in a battle with my boss, right?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Susan wanted to know, when you have a classroom with wide variation in levels of speaking proficiency, do you recommend partner or group work be multi-level or similar level? And I think, Susan, is that, I'm assuming it's in relation to the strategies you've shared.
Right. And I also would assume that when she's saying level, she's talking about language proficiency level. I'm guessing.
That is my understanding. That is my understanding. Yes.
So this is one of those that I would love to be able to give a cut and dry answer, right? Like 72.9% of the time, make sure that they are heterogeneously grouped by one proficiency level difference. It'd be great to say that. It's not clean like that. In my experience, if I'm putting in the supports, like you have processing time on your own, you have processing time afterward, I'm going to give you time to feel prepared before you ever share out. It allows for a greater opportunity for multiple linguistic levels all to be working together. So if I had to make a blanket statement, heterogeneous language levels or homogeneous language levels, I'm going to lean toward heterogeneous almost every time. There are some exceptions to that, though. If the purpose of this conversation is, for example, to really clearly understand 4 or 5 different past tense verbs. And I'm focusing on that because my intermediate learners in Houston ISD are focusing on that in this lesson. There might be a great benefit to having kids who have similar linguistic proficiencies currently talking at the same time, where my kids that are on different proficiency levels might be talking about that at a different level or something completely different. So the short, messy, untidy answer is, it really depends on what the talking task is. What are they talking about? And it depends on what your goal for that collaboration is. But I will say that if, as a general rule for me, I would rather be thoughtful about, so who are these 4 kids? And maybe in a class of 25, right? In a given class period, I might have maybe 5 or 6 kids that for language proficiency, I've got to be super thoughtful about where I put them. Maybe because this student literally arrived yesterday and I don't have any other newcomers. That might be an example where I have to be really strategic about where I'm going to put that kid, right? It might be the other end of the spectrum, that I have 2 kids that just haven't scored enough on the formal assessment to be reclassified as proficient, except for all intents and purposes they are, and most of my the rest of the kids in my class aren't. I want to be thoughtful about where I put them. But I think that this idea of mixing language levels for most talking tasks, when we have the layers of support in place, processing, sentence stems, appointed roles, a lot of the things that you're going to find out in these small moves, but in the small moves book, it works, even if you have kids, all 4 of the kids are at all different proficiency levels.
Mm-hmm. We do have time for one more question. Thank you for that. And I'm going to take this question from Francisco, who wants to know, any ideas for how we can get more buy-in from colleagues around getting into the mindset of making these small moves? Because it's, if you want to have that accountability and colleague accountability toward changing your practice in that way, it helps to have colleagues who have also, bought into the idea. So what happens if we have some resistance with some colleagues? Any tips for how to win them over with the small moves?
You might not like this answer, but this is what I do. I want to become expert at anything I'm working at. So follow the advice from this webinar, right? Decide what kind of teacher you want to be, focus on the small moves and automate them. So much so that your classroom, you have great habits. You're implementing all the small moves and they are habitual for you. And then we're going to say, so let's see here, Mr. Padilla, I need a little help with something. And I'm wondering if you can just come into my classroom and just watch this one thing. And I want your input on it. So I'm not saying, come watch how awesome I am. I'm actually asking this fixed mindset, kind of stick in the mud teacher who I'm butting heads against, right? I'm inviting him into my room. That makes me vulnerable, right? And I'm seeking his advice about something. And without exception, every time I've done that, they don't always say it, but those teachers have given me the feedback on what I wanted. And I've seen shifts in their teaching just because they saw it with their own eyes with the same kids that they teach. Because a lot of times that fixed mindset isn't really, if you get down to the core, a lot of it is still that self-judgment. These are teachers that feel comfortable where they're at. They don't want to be vulnerable. What they're doing, they feel like works just fine, right? But then if they can see it, if they can see what they learn about or what they're voluntold to do in live action with the same student population that they teach, I find inviting them in is always better than any other option as far as trying to convince them, because I think if we get in the kind of, research-based battle, they're not going to listen. But you bring them into your room, you show a little vulnerability and you seek their help, they feel empowered and valued, then you're going to start to get some momentum.
That's a great answer. And again, not the answer I was expecting. So I think you were right about that, but I love that. I love that perspective. Thank you so much, Nancy, for joining us today. And Jordan, I will email you and get information on where you would like your book sent. And for the rest of you, don't forget to please tweet for your chance to win a copy of the book. Let's see, that wraps it up. So happy summer break, everybody. This is where you can find Saddleback online and on social media. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And thank you so very much to Nancy and to all of you for taking time out of your day to spend with us. And hopefully we will see you all next week. Take care, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you.